Hi there, welcome to Long Distance Review, and on this episode I'm going to look at the new album from Gojira entitled Fortitude. Gojira were formed way back in 1996. They're from France and they were kind of formed by the brothers Mario and Joe Duplantier. They started life more as a technical death metal band, especially on those early albums, the debut album Terra Incognito and the follow-up The Link. And it wasn't really until 2005 from Master Sirius where they started to get a lot of critical acclaim and commercial success, let's say. And that album had a much more progressive sound and it incorporated mellower tones and atmospherics at times. They followed that album up with an album called The Way of All Flesh, which kind of continued along the same path. But in my personal opinion, The Way of All Flesh is way too long. It's like 75 minutes long or something. And trimming that would have been better. Still a good album. It still has some great stuff on it. But I really thought they nailed their sound when they released L'Enfant Sauvage, which was an edited and trimmed down version of what they'd done before, and it focused on dynamics and structure to create a much more heavy, melodic and dramatic album. I think that album's fantastic. To this day, it's still an incredible album. And after that, they released the album before this one, entitled Magma in 2016. And Magma was a much more concise affair, let's say. It was really trimmed down, songs were trimmed down in length, and the album felt more precise and concise, and I guess it had much more mainstream appeal than before. It's not like they lost everything that was Gojira about them, but it had a mainstream appeal to it, and consequently became their most successful album to date. So really they've evolved from this brutal tech death metal band to a real metal powerhouse, pioneering tech prog-metal band, incorporating things like syncopated rhythms alongside melodies and atmospherics to really have their own Gojira, quintessentially Gojira sound. Lyrically, Gojira have always use their music to force issues that are very important to them onto the listener. Things like environmental issues, climate change, and like the human condition with the world around it, and also using personal experiences. Like Magma was written off the back of their mother passing away, so it did have a lot of personal writing involved in it as well. And there are bands in the metal genre which do similar things to Gojira, but I just don't really think anyone does it to such a great standard and to as much success as Gojira have done. Which brings us on to Fortitude, which is their 7th studio album. And in their own words, they went on a 2-year creative odyssey in 2018, which culminated in this album. And really, this is probably 2021's most anticipated metal release, well, especially one of them. The album opens up with the first single off the album and opening track, Born for One Thing, and it's this monstrous opener. As always with Gojira, the vocals are down in the mix, which lets the instruments shine, and with these huge polyrhythmic drums and these lovely guitar harmonies they put in. I love the crunching, powerful sort of power chords they put into that song, and that little descending guitar lick they have. I really like that. It's followed up by the second track, Amazonia, which is a very Sepultura Roots-inspired song. It's sort of got this galloping tribal bounce to it. It's very impossible not to enjoy that groove and that mouth harp bounce that it has on it. Lyrically, it's chastising the world for sort of sitting back and watching the world burn in front of them. What Gojira have always done on their albums, well, not always, but certainly in the last 3 or 4 albums, the first 3 songs on the album are real tour de forces of metal, and it kind of pulls the listener into the album instantly. It's like grabs you and brings you in. They did it on L'Enfant Sauvage with Explosia and L'Enfant Sauvage and The Axe, and they did it on Magma as well, and there's no difference on here. The 1, 2, 3 of Born for One Thing, Amazonia and Another World is just grabs the listener and brings them straight into the album, and it really hooks you in. Another World is another good song. It could be actually really repetitive. It's got a repetitive rhythm, but what it always becomes hypnotic, the rhythm, and especially with Joe's echoing vocals around you, you sort of end up getting spaced out in it, which is kind of the sort of theme of the song, let's say, and it has that technicality that you kind of get hooked into with Gojira and just sort of drift off into. What Gojira have done in the metal world is created a niche for themselves. Not really a niche, but they've now got a sound that is obviously Gojira. They have that distinctive, those pick scrapes that Gojira put in, you go, oh, yeah, that's Gojira. Or that vocal mix where it's back in the vocals are back in the mix, yeah, that's Gojira. That rhythm section of Mario and Labadie is just incredible. I'm always tuning into the bass and the drums, just hearing what they're doing, and you hear that sound and you go, that's Gojira. It's like when you heard the down-tuned bass of Korn, you go, that's Fieldy from Korn, that's Korn. Or you hear that guitar tone that Pantera had, you go, that's Dimebag Darrell. Or you hear that galloping bass that Iron Maiden had throughout their career, you go, that's Steve Harris of Iron Maiden, or British Lion as well, not so much. But anyway, my point is Gojira now have that sound which is purely their own. There are bands like them, but it's a rare thing to have that individuality in metal where you can pick them out. And Gojira have that nowadays. The first real surprise on this album comes in the form of a song called Hold On, which opens up with this sort of marching, almost goth beat with ethereal vocals around it. And then this huge lead guitar riff comes in and the pace just changes up as only Gojira can do. And what they do in that 5 minutes of a track is more than a lot of bands can do on an entire album. They shift the tempo again and again, providing more energy and different emotions throughout a whole 5-minute track. And I think the album actually really hits its zenith or its peak in the middle of the album with this 7-minute combination of 2 tracks, the title track Fortitude and the track The Chant, which is basically one song, a 7-minute sort of song, but it works, it sort of incorporates world music to create this somber stomp centered around this very simple and effective hook, which is like a chant and a guitar riff. And it sort of creates this brilliant atmosphere and melody that it's a real success of what Gojira are doing. It's a new thing they're trying to do. It's a much more melodic and atmospheric thing they're doing, but it succeeds so well. And the fact that Gojira can succeed in doing that and sit it straight up seamlessly alongside the more aggressive face of Gojira in songs like Sphinx and Newfound is just incredible, really, how they can do that. The harsh vocals still remain. Joe's harsh vocals are still all over this album, but it's not the cliched metal harsh vocals as in, here's a bit of clean, here's a bit of harsh. What he does, he uses his clean vocals on songs that require it, that create atmosphere. And he uses the harsh vocals where the aggressive tone and nature of that track requires that. And I mean, there's always going to be people, like Gojira fans, there's always going to be some fans that go, I preferred the death metal stuff of Terror Incognito. Maybe you did, maybe your ears are tuned into that and that is your favourite thing that Gojira have ever done, but objectively, they are a better band musically, they are a better band in terms of their production levels, and they are better at their craft than they ever were. And this album is a showcase of that, really. I like towards the end of the album, they have that crowd-pleasing song called Into the Storm, which was released earlier on. It has that thunderous Herta drum rhythm on it, which I just sit there and make a confused face as trying to pick out what rhythm I'm meant to be following on the drums sometimes, that ride cymbal and that snare. I love it, and that rapid picking guitar on it. It's bound to be a live favourite. It's a huge song. I like the song towards the end, The Trails, which is a very different effect they're going for. It uses sort of whispered vocals and delicate guitars to create a sort of tension-building atmosphere, and I thought that was really good, almost Deftones-like in the nature of that song. And then you get onto the final track, a track called Grind, or The Grind, and it's probably the heaviest song on the album, totally unexpected when I got to it. Has these car bomb style guitar work, car bombs in the band, sort of laser sounding guitar work on that, and this glorious groove throughout it. I love Joe's vocals on that, the aggressive, harsh vocals on that, where he says surrender to the grind. In 50 minutes in length, they've edited and track listed this album perfectly, really. And this is the album that should push this band onto those headlining slots at Download. And I've said it before about bands, but really this is the album that should push them, that should open the doors, and they should go to the headlining slots. We can't always have Iron Maiden headlining festivals for the next 40 years. Gojira are there, and this album should push them onto that. And those people that go, oh, I prefer their older stuff, they've not compromised in their sound on this album. They've not compromised in heaviness or the technicality. They've just incorporated newer elements into their sound to create a bigger atmosphere and a wider palette of Gojira. In my opinion, Gojira have released the best metal album of 2021, easily. And, I mean, it hasn't been a great year for metal, to be honest with you, this year, but this is an incredible album, a stunning piece of work. It's better than Magma, I think, and it's a real masterful display of technicality and atmospherics and melody and progressive metal all wrapped up in a ball, and it's a brilliant album. So yeah, Gojira Fortitude, I like it. Let me know what you think of the album, and I will be back soon with another review. Thanks very much for watching. Goodbye.